Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sim Sundays podcast. This is our monthly roundup episode. So, of course, I'm joined by George Morgan and Random Cool Sign. Good morning, both.
Good morning.
Some,
Good morning.
Some very bombastic thumbs up there. I'm a fan. Okay, so obviously, before this episode, we always go through and we say, what are we bringing to the table? And it was a bit of a slow start to the conversation because there's been a lot of kind of non-news, i.e. stuff that hasn't happened. So, for example, no F1 23 esports, there's no rain in iRacing that we were expecting, etc. Even when we look at Le Mans Ultimate, it's now kind of like soft launching. But actually, then once we dived in a little deeper, we have found that there's quite a bit that's happened in January 2024. We will not be talking about Horny Horner at all. Never. No mention of it. No allusion to it. We will not.
I can't
be
believe you said that.
into the F1 disaster that is going on right now. Okay, so that's it. Okay, we're drawing a line underneath that, and I'm not even going to pause for breath to allow either of you to jump in and comment on that story. We're going to go straight into.
But Ricardo had some really.
We're going to go straight into. I know he had.
No.
We heard them before the podcast, and I don't want them repeated here, okay? It's outrageous. Right, okay. Forza, we're going to talk Forza. So what's been happening in the world of Forza recently?
Well, they've changed the career modes. You can now do conversions from credits towards car customization points. Not apparently. I've driven. I have like 67 hours in Forza, and it's a really boring single player experience. It requires you to go through each and every single car, even if it's a repeat, at very least 3 hours to make the car, slightly tuned. You needed more than that if you wanted to unlock everything. Well, as you can imagine. After a while, if you want to do 20, 30, 50 cars, 60, 70 cars, you just need to unlock stuff. You need to drive, if you are completely efficient with it, at very least 350 hours to have a good roster of cars. Now they are redesigning it, so it's a little more, it's a little bit easier. They are going towards it the same way that Gran Turismo did back in mid-2022 or something like that, or essentially revising the economy so that it will be easier for you to jump in and drive stuff. It's not as simple as it is with Forza Horizon 5, but it's simpler than before.
Interesting that you made a direct comparison to Gran Turismo in 2022. Like, I wonder if this is because we've said before on this show that Forza always seems to be playing catch up with Gran Turismo. Gran Turismo seems to always be the ones coming up with the novel ideas that actually work, and then Forza. I don't know. Forza always feels like it's been on the back foot, and yet we've discussed this at length before. That Forza, there's a real emotional attachment for a lot of people with Forza, because Forza is kind of where a lot of the sim races that we know and love will have started in Forza, kind of 10 years ago. In fact, there's a really funny story that our creative director, Matt, who does all of our UI UX designs on Grid Finder, we interviewed Nathan Tague, I think 2-3 episodes ago. And when we do the group chat about sharing assets to make the episode artwork and whatnot, they knew each other from Forza lobbies back in the day, and like they lived nowhere near each other. And then they were like, "Oh, what?" So like Forza is this real like melting pot of people who have then gone on to do stuff in sim racing, and yet sadly it seems to have fallen behind. It seems to have lost the initiative, perhaps.
On this point, I don't think it lost initiative. It's just tried something a little bit different because their economy will be closer to what Forza 2 and Forza 3 were in the past. Essentially, they are just reshaping the economy. So, you don't feel like pressure to spend that much time in something that might not be a useful, waste of time for you. Because the way that all of these, car collecting games have always been is that it has a slow start, but then it picks up. Not so much on Forza Horizon, but on Gran Turismo, you don't have like 1 million credits from the beginning, from the get-go. you need to still fight for them. Same thing with Forza. But after a while, because you've driven so much, there's really no point to go through the progression system just for one car when you can just, you already have accumulated millions and millions of credits over 70, 80, 90, 100 hours. So we have to remember that the way that Forza was doing is more related to the Game Pass, because Game Pass pays towards the studios on time spent in the app. So in this case, if they allow you to spend 350 hours, 500, 1,000 hours because you're just grinding cars, it's more money for the studio.
Yeah, I mean that's very interesting. We said before the show, I kind of suggested that the removal of the level 50 requirement, for example, to unlock all the various items, is a sign of the kind of TikTok generation wanting instant gratification. They just want to play the game. They just want to have access to everything straight away. They don't want to go through that progression system that you used to go through back when we were kids. But actually, it sounds like perhaps it's landed in a more middle ground. Like, yes, there is a bit of that, but also it was a bit overkill in the first place.
I don't think, once again, I don't think it's about the TikTok generation. If there's a TikTok generation game in racing game, is it Forza Horizon? It's about removing a barrier of entry that didn't exist before TikTok, which is in this case in Forza 3. It was 500 years ago. Right now, you still had to fight for the upgrades, but after a certain point, because you invested so much time in the game, you can't really ask people, come on, for this car you need to spend 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 hours just to unlock the car, because you already accumulated so many credits. It's the progression system now that is, instead of being stepped, they're putting it more into a more logarithmic thing. It has a slow start because you're learning the ropes of the game, and then starts to be easier for you as you go into the game more towards the end game of the game.
So is this a good time to start Forza then? If you've not dabbled in Forza and maybe you've watched some reviews and they've been a little bit iffy and you're like, okay, maybe I'll just stick to whatever I'm doing and I'm not going to jump across to Forza. Do you think that given these changes, is this now like a good time? If you haven't tried it before, now's a fairly decent time to give that game a go.
To be honest, I have tried it before and I wouldn't know. Because I haven't tried it with the changes. I'm not sure if the changes are live. Or they will be live in a further update. Because the problem with Forza, it's not just that. There are other issues with multiplayer, but if they remove that situation, they remove that issue, it might be a good place to start for single player.
March 2024 this comes out.
Yeah, but in multiplayer, dear God, that game is it has a good structure. It just doesn't have a very good player base in multiplayer. It's a bit of a mess.
In terms of driver standards or numbers
yes, in terms of driver standards. It's very easy to game the safety rating. To be fair, it is fairly easy to do it as well in Gran Turismo. Let's not say that it isn't, because there are a couple of guys that they're extremely popular because of how griefy they are. So I had the first month I had with Forza multiplayer was fantastic, absolutely great, loved it. Right, only the multiplayer, it drives great, all of that. I went 2 months later or something like that, end of December and November, and I couldn't drive it. It was like a completely new world. It's Aladdin. It's a whole new world, I don't know what the hell happened. It's not the same people. Every corner I do, I'm being rammed off. I'm faster, but it doesn't matter. I'm still going against the wall because, they decided to ram you. So I don't know.
I'm unfamiliar with the Forza multiplayer lobbies. Can you select, like you can in some games, to race only with those on PC?
As far as I'm aware, no. But
because I wonder if that's a big element of it, racing with people on controller on their couch who were just kind of messing around for
I don't think that's I don't think there is a divide between console players and PC players. I think there's a
Okay.
divide between Game Pass players and non-Game Pass players. I don't want to cast
Mm.
aspersions on them, but there's definitely a schism before Game Pass was popular in that game and when it wasn't.
Okay, we've got a title for one of the shorts that's going to come out of this episode. Random call sign wages
Hates
war
Game
on
Pass.
Game Pass and Game Pass races.
You shall not Game
Once
Pass.
again,
Okay.
it's not all of them, but there is a cause and effect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Well, you've said it now. You said it now. You'll reap the rewards. Okay. Right. So that's Forza. So it's a big announcement in January, but not necessarily anything concrete that's actually happening in January. And I'm gonna dive into Forza before March, so I can see the before and after, I think, and then we can report back in our March catch up. Okay. So we are moving on now. We're segueing beautifully onto Gran Turismo Sport, and I have something prepared here. In the virtual world, we found our thrill. Gran Turismo Sport, now quiet and still. Engines hushed, no more races to vie. A sad farewell as memories fly. ChatGPT, man, it brought a tear to my eye.
It's beautiful.
You should have said that, Tom. I was going to say you were literally sweating over that for ages.
I
was. Yeah, I was just sat by the riverside, just staring out into the sunset, writing down these haikus, these limericks.
Beautiful song.
I settled on that.
I'm happy it's not roses are reds, violets are blue. Gran Turismo, we say goodbye to you.
That was great.
That was very good.
That was beautiful. Why did I bother with ChatGPT when we have our poet laureate in the
in another life I was a poet.
Yeah.
And he knows it.
It's deep, man. So are you sad?
Well, yes and no. I didn't spend too much time with Gran Turismo Sport. So I came really late into Gran Turismo Sport, and I didn't spend much time with it because it wasn't Gran Turismo 6 or 7.
I did see this.
It's a good stepping stone.
Yeah, Super GT put out quite a heartwarming post about it because, of course, his very career was pretty much founded through, or he certainly gained traction through that game. That was something I think that meant a great deal to him. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, there's that game does resonate, I think, with certain people more than others. I think so. Yeah.
I would like to.
A lot of good content with it, though. It's for me. It signaled the casual multiplayer, and also signaled the exponential increase in asset quality. I think there's a time before Gran Turismo Sport, and even 6, and after it, because it's completely bonkers. We're talking about the 7-year-old game now, or something like that. That even Forza 7 cannot catch up.
That livery designer as well they had on Gran Turismo Sport was well ahead of its time as well, right? I mean, I remember using it, and you can actually upload, custom logos that you would never see in a licensed product, which is just nuts. So, it was an incredible bit of artistry from Gran Turismo in my view, and I think I probably spent more time in the livery designer than I did in anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. I think there's a whole cadre of people that love racing games that love, kind of not just tuning the car in the Forza sense where you're kind of upgrading it for performance. Like if I think back to some of the first games I played, Need for Speed 2 Underground, I spent far more time choosing my decals and stickers and paint jobs than I did actually driving around the streets or doing the racing.
You do look like a Corsa Vauxhall Alfred's edition guy, though.
I don't know if that's a compliment.
I can definitely see you.
There is
after
one
work
thing
at Alfred's to get mods.
It's
for your special edition Corsa 1.2, man.
The soundtrack for Need for Speed, though, kind of fell apart when you then go down the line and you find that Lost Profits are on the playlist, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. I mean, Need for Speed 2 soundtrack was iconic. That's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if music could. Okay, right. This was not planned, right? But could music play a bigger part in racing games?
Oh, yes. It already does. It already does. Look, GT Revival. It will have the OST from Steven Baysted. Awesome. Even if you go to Gran Turismo, of course we have the elevator lounge music, but we also have, Moon Over Castle. Forza add bangers. Project Cars 2 as well, but they are from Steven Baysted. There's a really, really big history in racing games with excellent OSTs.
I think FIFA did it better, though, if I'm honest. I think if you look at what FIFA have brought to the table over the years, like if you got the FIFA 23 game, for example, you had some of the greatest songs in FIFA games from, I think, as late as the late 90s right through, and they did one soundtrack to basically pay homage to all the FIFA games from the years gone by using some of the songs from those soundtracks. I think we do miss that a little bit. I think the F1 game is guilty of it too, because we generally just have the generic soundtrack in the background. I think it'd be quite cool for it to have its own dedicated soundtrack. I think that would be pretty decent. But yeah, it's a shame.
I understand what you mean.
See enough of it. Yeah.
The thing is, racing games, and especially sim racing games, are smaller, so they can't pay that much to have Taylor Swift or whatever it's popular. Licensing to right now.
Taylor Swift.
But I do prefer the way to have an original soundtrack without so many of the popular bangers.
I mean, I can imagine that on like Assetto Corsa, like Shituka Revival, or maybe the Nordschleife, just like listening to some Taylor Swift on the way around. But I don't know if I would want that like Brands Hatch GT3. Yeah, I think I didn't mean soundtracks as in like what you're talking about, Ricardo, like the OSDs and stuff. I meant as in what George was talking about, where I think back to FIFA and Need for Speed on the PlayStation and the PlayStation 2. And I remember those songs. Like there was that song on FIFA by Miss Dynamite. I can't remember what it was called. It might have just been called Miss Dynamite. I can't remember. And it's like it sticks with me whenever I see FIFA, or if somebody's talking about playing FIFA, like that song sticks in my mind. And the same with Need for Speed 2, right? There's like, but in Need for Speed 2, there's a bunch of them. I just wonder how we could.
Tom, you need to see my Spotify playlist. You need to see it because honestly, if you look at my playlist, honestly. It's honestly filled with. I got a whole FIFA. I literally downloaded the entire FIFA soundtrack from FIFA 05, FIFA 06 because I still remember those songs today. After playing that game all the way back then.
That's about the era I'm talking about too.
Yeah, like Chasing Rainbows, for example, is a song I have. Why do you feel old? I feel old, man. But yeah,
Funk Soul Brother,
crazy.
Funk Soul Brother in FIFA 99. Okay, Robbie Williams in FIFA 2000. That's how old I feel.
The Gorillas.
Back in my day.
The Gorillas. What about those? I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
is it Soul Child remix?
We can put a link
as well.
I don't remember. I was a FIFA 90 guy and 50,000 guy.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't know.
George, we should put a link to this Spotify playlist in the episode description for this episode, so that anyone listening who wants to become a follower of George Morgan's Spotify account and dip into these FIFA memories.
I listen to it every time I travel.
FIFA feels.
And I do a lot of traveling.
Okay, so I mean, interesting that like we're talking about Gran Turismo Sport, and it seems to have evoked a poem, and B, a talk about music, and it is kind of like one of the most beautiful, and as you said, like ahead of its time racing games. Like it's absolutely stunning and like set the benchmark for like the graphics of the assets, the game going forward. It's been
Gran Turismo
sad because I was a big Gran Turismo Sport player.
Gran Turismo has always been ahead of its time, though. generally. I mean, I look back at what it did with GT2, for example. That was my first racing game on console, was Gran Turismo 2. And just the whole licensing process of having to unlock cars, buy cars, things of that nature. I mean, that was far beyond anything around that era back in the mid-90s. You would never, ever see that around that time. So I think that's a credit really to Gran Turismo, and that is a trend that they have persisted with, I would say, right through since they were first established. And I think it's unreal. They were also very much the pioneers, and we've looked at the film that's centered around Jan Mardenborough, for example, sort of pioneering, racing drivers coming from sim racing and stepping into the track onto the track for real, which again was unheard of. People laughed at it back then. And I just think that very much speaks to what Gran Turismo is, and that is ahead of its time.
I totally agree. And next Wednesday, I'm recording an episode with Darren Cox, so founder of GT Academy. Worked on the race and WTF1 to tell the story behind. It's kind of like telling the story behind telling the story of the story. I.e., obviously, he was the founder of GT Academy, and then he was kind of pivotal in the film Gran Turismo. And it'll be interesting next week to hear his story of telling the story of his story.
So are you telling me that the movie Gran Turismo is in reality part of a Nolan film?
Sorry to break it to you. I mean, Christopher Nolan films are freaking wild. I absolutely love Christopher Nolan films. But no, this is not quite the same. And I also, it was interesting meeting Darren. I've spoken to him before already, like before the episode. And obviously, if I'm remembering correctly, Orlando Bloom plays him, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I haven't seen the movie, so I wouldn't know.
You haven't seen the movie?
I watched it. I watched it recently on my flight to Jeddah. It was actually really, really good. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought they did a great job of trying to capture, and I loved how they really did incorporate the Gran Turismo footage of the game as well, which is great for Gran Turismo in its own right. Yeah.
There were some cheesy bits at the beginning of the film.
Of course.
But anyway, less about that, because we're going to have an episode either next week or the week after that's going to be coming out, which will be all about the film and GT Academy with Darren. So you two think of your questions for him before recording on Wednesday. So we are now going to move on to iRacing.
iRacing has improved their special events since 21, because we have to remember, normally they have like thousands and tens of thousands of people. They have like 100 splits, whatever it is. And it's not easy to get all of those people running at the same time, because and then you have the splits. The splits are like, you have a split, start 3 hours later, another split starts. So they have, at certain points, they have hundreds of splits going on, tens of thousands of people, and it's really not easy to maintain an event like that. And in 2019, 20, 21, and I think even in 22, maybe not so much in 22, the events used to crash a lot. People would need to wait for further and further away splits or race start times, and now they are running it even with more people, and they are running it without the hitch. There are still issues, but you got to give them to them. There's nobody around doing special events better than iRacing at the moment.
I mean, as a game, are there any other games doing special events like this? Obviously, you got third-party platforms that do games, and then you have some branded events. But I don't know I think they're the only ones that do their own in-game events like this, right?
They pioneer it. They really do. I mean, if I'm honest, you look at iRacing, they're the only current sim/game that currently adopts, should we say, a purpose-built system that embraces esports and competitive sim racing. I don't know of any. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there is any other platform that does. I think we're seeing sort of games that are trying it, and I think there are instances where we are seeing a few games trying to find their way down that direction. I think Rensport are taking that approach going forward. But obviously, it's still early days as to whether we're going to see them kind of position themselves where they are going to be a full-on competitor to iRacing. I think that's just going to take time. But at the same time, I really don't see anyone topping what iRacing are doing on the competitive sense at the moment. They really do. They have taken the ball and run with it.
Yeah, we often have the debate, and or actually we haven't had this debate for a while. But I remember maybe beginning of last year, we had a couple of episodes where the question of is iRacing too expensive kept coming up, and it was always about that the common argument is why do you pay subscription and have to pay for the content? Surely it's one or the other. But it's almost like you pay for the content, you pay the subscription for the quality of events and the quality of the esports system that they run. So it's almost like you're paying for two distinct things. And as much as you hear it's expensive, you also hear it's incredible. So it's almost like, well, there you go. That's kind of your answer.
These types of structures are extremely expensive. I want to bring a side point to make this point a little with more context. There's this big streamer called Piracy, whatever. It's a guy that used to work in Blizzard. So he's popping up a lot in YouTube Shorts and Instagram. So he was doing some math about how much does his stream cost to Twitch? Not how much he earns from stream, how much his stream costs. So normally he has average 8,000 people watching his stream. His stream for 8 hours costs Twitch about $4,500 in bandwidth.
What?
Jeez.
Yeah. So you can expect that something like iRacing can be very expensive as well, because bandwidth costs a lot of money. It's not just about the storage; it's about the bandwidth.
Yeah.
So imagine 10,000 people racing at every single time. Of course, it's not the same as a stream, but you put everything together, somebody's got to pay.
It's a very interesting
That's very
point.
interesting. I had never even considered the costs to Twitch. You look at things like YouTube, and you look at how much video that they store and how much live video is going on at any one time. You assume that this is all negligible pennies, right? But
no, it's
clearly,
not.
Clearly, that's not the case.
No.
That makes it even more impressive. I want
Probably why they're so reliant on
like
advertising.
Talk about.
Yeah.
Say again.
It's probably why they're so reliant on advertising, which to offset those
Right.
costs.
That's why all the theories are sponsored, right?
There's a whole argument. There's a whole thing about ads and all of that, but maybe for another time, because I have a huge rant about this.
Okay, well, let's save that for next month. Okay, if it's a quiet month in February, we can do the ad rant.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only other thing we could talk about iRacing, and we kind of you probably worked out if you're listening that we're going through games. So Forza, Gran Turismo. We actually skipped across Motorsport Games to iRacing, and the other thing we'll talk about iRacing is no rain yet, but we've discussed that already. I think we all like the fact that they're waiting until it's good before they release it. Probably case closed. So Motorsport Games, there was an announcement yesterday that their NASDAQ listing has been extended. So they'd had a filing, a warning that they were going to be removed from the NASDAQ. However, they've put forward a plan saying, yep, we did this poorly, and this is our plan to recover, and can you please keep listing us on the NASDAQ? And it's been extended until at least after the Le Mans Ultimate game comes out. So as you can, I can't imagine the stress of that studio right now. They've got a lot riding on the game. Stephen
their
Hood,
last
new
chance.
CEO in there. Say again.
It's basically their last chance.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting one, and for sim racers, I don't know. Maybe this is the optimist in me, but I'm quietly optimistic that this is going to be perhaps pivotal. So the thing about Le Mans Ultimate for me is that obviously it's focusing on endurance right now. Most sim racing titles do endurance of some kind, but there aren't really any that would say that they are an endurance racing game. And endurance racing has become so popular in sim racing. like that concept of a game which is all focused around that and driver swaps and strategies, and I'm intrigued to see what the kind of asynchronous endurance racing, like asynchronous co-op might look like, i.e. I can do the first hour stint, save my game, and then you can pick up the next stint, for example, right? So I'm quietly excited by it, but obviously when you look back at what they've done previously, they've not really given us much cause for confidence.
No.
I hope they don't rely a lot or solely on... Sorry, I'll let you go in a second. I hope they don't rely a lot or solely in single player, because there's only so much you can do about it. And thing about endurance games on non-endurance platforms is that then most of the content that you do there is really not endurance.
No, it's it's the problem is there is a very short attention span when it comes to content, I think, and naturally people like when you watch any sim racing on Twitch, they like the very short 5-lapper open lobbies, for example, when it comes down to the F1 game, or things of that nature. I would argue, yes, there is a case in point that there is, I would say, extended interest in endurance racing. I think that goes hand in hand as well with the kind of popularity of the World Endurance Championship in itself. The actual racing series is now since become quite a phenomenon. You've got guys like LeBron James showing up and opening the show and opening the race. You've got Formula One drivers, past and present, taking part in the championship because it's considered the true test. It's always been that way, but it only feels like now it's getting the attention that it deserves. And I think with the ability to see multiple car classes on track at the same time, I think is quite compelling from a viewer's standpoint. So, I think that kind of drip feeds into the sim racing side quite a bit. And it's the ultimate test, even as a sim racer.
Excuse the pun. Sorry about that. The ultimate test. There we go. There's the name for the for the video. I'm always thinking YouTube Shorts. Le Mans Ultimate, the ultimate test.
What can I say?
Okay, so obviously we don't have a huge amount. We don't have much more information on that other than kind of our optimism and what we've seen. The small amount of stuff that's been released so far about that game. So hopefully next month we'll have a bit more to say about it. Talking of which, this episode has gone live 2 days after the embargo has lifted on the Fanatec Club Sport TD+. And we know a guy who has tested it.
Check my video.
Shameless.
Link in the description.
Link in the description. At the time of reading this, doing this, there's already people with the Club Sport TD+ at hand. They've received it. It's been quite fast. They had it stocked for a while. So whatever they say about the Club Sport TD, the Plus does it. PlayStation, whatever. Check my video.
Do you like it?
Yes.
Okay. He's keeping his cards close to his chest.
Yeah.
You've got to go and check out his video for more of a review. God damn it, man! I thought we were going to get some exclusives here.
No.
Okay, so obviously, this could be good news for Fanatec if the reviews come out are positive, and then everyone's thinking good things about Fanatec again, because people have been thinking a lot of bad things about Fanatec recently. Obviously, they had the backlog with all their orders, they had their distribution issues, etc. And then Thomas Jakemeyer, CEO founder of Fanatec, did an interview recently where he kind of explained why there were issues, why they were facing these issues, etc., etc. And obviously Black Friday was mentioned, as they weren't expecting to do so well. But if you look in the comments of that video, I think sim racers are not necessarily convinced, perhaps, by the reasoning for these delays.
Look, I have no reason to disagree with Thomas in regards to that, because it was, if the warehouse wasn't really not there. It wasn't created by them, but for me, that is not the problem isn't really the warehouse. The problem is that they always had the possibility to tell the customer saying, this is happening. You want to still buy with us. They never did it.
Yeah.
So whatever people are saying in the comments, and they've done it on my videos, it's totally irrelevant. They always had the power to tell you, look, this is happening. And if they always had the power and they never did it, either it was they were scared, didn't care, or couldn't remember it.
Yeah.
Look, you do your own conclusions about it.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, if we're going to try and take a positive out of it, it is good news for sim racing, online racing generally, that there's now such a high demand for all these wheels and pedal sets, and all of these stuff gets sold secondhand, right? I don't know anybody who's bought a wheel and pedals and then thrown it out. So a lot of this stuff cycles through to Facebook Marketplace or eBay, right? So there's just so many wheel and pedal sets getting created and shipped every single month. There's so many people every single month who are joining our world of sim racing. And Fanatec have fallen foul of the huge demand. So again, trying to be the optimist, it's a good problem for sim racing to have. A bad problem, like the bad problem, would be Fanatec haven't sold enough, and they're struggling to make ends meet, and they're going under. Like that's a bad news story for us. So I guess there is a bit of a positive spin to it. But you're right. I think nowadays, I feel like customer bases, we don't want the shiny anymore. We don't want the shiny press releases like maybe people once did, and they wanted to feel like it was coming from some shiny gold-plated corporate that's got everything under control. I think nowadays people prefer honesty, and they prefer to see humanity behind a brand. And so if a brand says, we've made a mistake here, and for that reason things are going to be delayed, and we're really, really sorry, and here is a way to process a refund if that's what you want, we're just sticking our hands up. Yep. I imagine they would have very few people putting in a refund, because they'd be like, oh, you know what, it was Black Friday and they had those distribution issues, and we love Fanatec. It might have even been, they could have even spun it into a positive, but they did not. Anyway,
look, they offered the 25% discount if you returned. Mm-hmm. It could always been the case. There was always a good faith there. There was good faith. You want a refund, we'll give it a 25% discount if you want to come back to us. You don't need to use this, but if you do, whatever.
Yeah.
The thing is, they never, look, I can't stress this enough. They never talked about it. Like, I don't understand why they prefer to have a disgruntled customer that keeps their stuff than a happy but not customer that's had the information coming from Fanatec. Look, we can't serve you right now if you don't want to wait. Because if you keep a disgruntled customer, the first opportunity is going to get away from your ecosystem. But the guy that you said, look, I can't do anything right now, here's the thing, they might come back.
Yeah, true. I totally agree. I'd love to. I'm trying to think of a counter argument to that, but I really can't. So we're going to move on to George Morgan being a celebrity.
Celebrity
the
George.
Guy is now in the Hall of Fame. The sim
Michael
racing
DeSanta is what
Hall of Fame. His name, his voice is carved in sim racing stone. You will now hear.
You'll never get rid of me, Tom.
You tell us, why are you now such a big deal?
Well, I'm not sure about big deal. I mean, to be honest with you, most of the streamers actually didn't even notice it at first. It was only until I didn't even know that they did it. To be honest, it was news to me. Assetto Corsa. I had no idea that they even had put me in the game. So it was kind of like, damn, when I found out. I was at the time I was just chilling at my desk, and I had a message from a guy called Luca, who was of course part of the Overtake lot, saying, "Oh, George Morgan is on the on the new Red Bull Ring DLC, and I was like, "You're joking." I was like, so I went on to Jardier's stream, and I could hear my voice in the background whilst he was racing at Red Bull Ring, and I was like, "Have I got like another stream open or something? Have I accidentally clicked on something?" No, it wasn't. I'm in the commentary box alongside my co-commentator at GT Open, Chris Stevens. So yeah, it's pretty wild. They use some of the footage from Red Bull Ring and put it in the game, which is crazy. Yeah.
It is very cool. It's bizarre that you didn't know, though. I suppose once you put that stuff out there, it's available, but
usually
it's kind of a crazy way to find out.
It is pretty nuts to sort of find out that way. I think if you look at it historically, if you actually listen to the commentary snippets from each of the tracks on the game, they're mainly GT World Challenge, as you'd expect, because it's an SRO licensed product. So you'd expect to hear, SRO commentary on it. But I think because, GT World Challenge haven't actually raced at Red Bull Ring in recent years, my guess is they didn't have a lot of, or much of a library to pick from. Obviously, GT Open has raced there every season, at least for the last few years. So it kind of made sense, I think, for them to take the nearest thing and kind of input it into the game. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock. I'll grant you that, but a pleasant one. It's an honor to be on the game.
Yeah. It's very cool. Cool. GT2. Our first impressions. This is like a when you see tech reviews and it'll be like unboxing of the Google Pixel 8, and then they'll do like a 2 weeks living with the Google Pixel 8. So let's have we've now lived with GT2s. What do we think?
I'm not driving them anymore because nobody drives them.
I think instead of just sort of centralizing my point of view on just GT2, I think I just want to kind of praise the approach that Assetto Corsa have made in terms of how they manage their releases, because I think with a game that's as timeless as Assetto Corsa Competizione is, you've got to remember it's been out for such a long period of time. It was released onto console very late into its lifespan. They continue to drop new content. And I'll be honest, because it's on Unreal Engine, which I have to tell you, Unreal Engine 4, let alone Unreal Engine 5, it still looks and upholds itself fantastic against many other of, the sort of, heavyweights, the game engine heavyweights that currently exist today. I think, honestly, it plays great. It's one of my favorite sims, 100%. And I'm not just saying that because they put my voice in the game. I think it's genuinely true. And not only that, but I think it's great that they've got the options there. And I just love that we have an official GT World Challenge license product. Because again, like WEC that we were discussing earlier on, GT World Challenge is also becoming more and more popular every day. And I've noticed certainly on the GT Open side that the interest in GT3 racing has definitely leveled up over the last few years.
Yeah, and it's kind of telling if you look at the average player numbers from January. ACC for the first time in a long time has overtaken F1. Obviously, in this case, F1 23 with an average player number of 2,735. F1 23 had 2,615. So I imagine GT2 plus the Red Bull Ring has played a big part in that. So it'll be interesting to see how long they can sustain it for.
Honestly, I don't think the GT2s will do anything because it's GT. What is GT2 in reality?
Right. So last year, I was fortunate enough to go to 5 SRO races. The Grid Finder team were competing, and we went and competed in the Fanatec Arena. And I got to watch a lot of racing. Obviously, I'd watch the GT4 race. I'd watch the GT3 race. I try and watch the GT3 qualifying. I really love watching the Clio Cup. I don't think I watched any of the GT2s just because I couldn't really work out what's exciting about them, because GT3 is that's the pinnacle. That's what everyone wants to get to. It's got a huge grid. It's got great drivers. It's very close racing. It's loud. It's fantastic. GT4 is like slightly slower, closer racing, but also a massive grid. Like, GT4 is an exciting series to watch, and I always think it's a shame that not too many people race it on ACC, because GT4 does produce incredibly close and competitive racing. But you've got GT3 and you've got GT4. Like, why do you need because the GT, the GT2 races, that's why people go and get their lunch, right? people are wandering around the paddock, grabbing a drink, just chilling out on the grass, and it's just it's just an annoying noise in the background. Like
my joke is that GT2 is a way that Stefan Rattel got to race against Thomas Jägermeier.
Yeah,
that's
my
gag.
Gentleman Drivers series, isn't it?
It's not just gentleman drivers. The gentleman drivers are they drive on Pro-Am. Those are the gentleman drivers. The GT2 are for millionaires that just want to drive every so often. Like it's like grown-up karts.
Yeah. I mean,
the grids are small. The grids are really
they're
small.
8 cars.
Yeah, in GT, because we run a GT Cup Championship with GT Open. It's essentially the sort of baby series that kind of supports what GT Open do, and obviously we get all the Porsche 992s, the 911s, you name it. They all race in this championship, but they opened it up then to sort of customized GT2 cars. So we've got now Mercedes running a GT2 car as well in that series, which is basically their baby AMG GT3, which they then run in that series as well. And it's quite nice because it does open up the field ever so slightly, but it does put a high impetus then on the BOP. They do have to kind of manage, the pace of the cars, because there's obviously quite a gulf in difference if you compare the Mercedes AMG and the Ferrari challenge car basically against the likes of a Porsche 992, 911. But it's actually, if you get the BOP just right, it's actually quite interesting and quite exciting. But you're absolutely right. I honestly think, in terms of going back to gaming, GT3 is obviously always going to be the big dog when it comes to racing.
Yeah, and sadly, the GT2s are more fun than GT3 cars.
Yeah, do you know what would have been crazy, right? And this would have, I guess this is almost a pointless statement because it never would have happened. But if they're looking at the SRO weekends, and I know the Clio Cups, the Clio Cup only happened, I think it was like 2 or 3 of the rounds. But in terms of adding another support series to ACC, imagine, right? And this is just my theory, right? But if they had introduced the Clio Cup to ACC, is it just me, or would that not have been super, super popular? Would you not get loads of people doing that? Front wheel drive.
I think no. Well,
I honestly think it would be great. I think
it's kind of like touring cars,
different.
Right? Like
it's
TCR,
just sufficiently different. The racing is brilliant. Like whenever the Clio Cups were on, the stands would be full because you just get to see bumper to bumper, 3 or 4 wide racing. Like the cars will be 3 wide on lap 4 and 5 still. Like the pack will still be together in lap 3. Like it's just the best racing ever. Like I sat up at turn 1 at the Nürburgring, and you see the turn 1 and then into the carousel. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 corners, and you just see the most brilliant battles go, and you just don't know where to look. Like it's so much fun. And then as soon as GT2 comes on, the stands are empty. Like but there's an interesting point: is does racing that's good to watch necessarily mean racing that's good to do in the sim environment?
No. Look, in Assetto Corsa Competizione, you have what could be the equivalent of 90s DTM, and nobody drives it, which is the enthusiast. Awesome car.
Yeah.
Great. Bumper to bumper. You push people aside, people push you aside. It's just lots of fisticuffs there. Nobody drives it. Nobody. I don't understand. It's an awesome car.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is
if you add the
popularity.
Clio Cup, it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's the popularity of the real life series, the real life counterpart, that makes the difference, because people want to be associated with those cars that they're watching on GT World Challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, Clio Cup does actually have a reasonable following. I mean, I've travelled with the Clio Cup series with GT Open. It's been part of our weekends, quite a few times, and I've had the fortune of watching it. I do enjoy watching it. But in terms, I think, of the notoriety and where it's positioned on the, shall we say, the tiers of motorsport in this day and age, I think obviously you're watching WEC, you're watching GT World Challenge, and I think when you're watching those particular championships, obviously GT3 is going to stand out. Your LMP, Le Mans prototypes are going to stand out. So that's why I would say we're at a position now where people are endurance racing and why people are driving GT3s and why Assetto Corsa essentially is so popular.
Well, this is my job, right? My job as host of this podcast is to throw out random curveballs, and then you guys bat those curveballs down. Like, no, Tom, you're being an idiot. Think straight. Clio Cups and ACC. What the hell? But I'm glad to do it. I will never ever stop. Right, before we finish, because we're nearly the end of this this monthly roundup episode, we are going to talk about okay, I'm basically going to say that whole point, but there's been no F123 esports. It's very quiet. But we're going to talk about league racing, F123 league racing. But before we do that, George, Celeros. Tell us about Celeros.
Well, Celeros now basically positioning themselves for a championship. Again, a big tournament finale, the Community Tournament Series, which is basically, I would argue, their sort of esports, their first real step into making it available to community players that obviously, pledge their support to the game and have done so. And I must say, looking at the live times that have come in from Tournament 1 and Tournament 2 in a bid to qualify for the tournament final, the approach and the dedication, the hours that have been spent, people have been spending approximately we had over 600 players taking part in this tournament series, and we've now got pilots they've essentially spent over I think like 100 hours or so on the game trying to qualify for this event, which is absolutely nuts. But yeah, racing around Aerobay obviously is still in development as such, but phenomenal, some phenomenal times that have blitzed the Genesis tournament from last year. The game has really come on in leaps and bounds. I had an opportunity recently to have a look at the sort of amendments that they've made to Aerobay in terms of how the front end of the track looks in comparison to where it was last year during the Genesis tournament, and they put in a lot of work to make it stand out. And it seems to have really taken the world by storm. I know that Alpine have now expressed interest in it now. Alpine Esports have actually pledged their support to the Community Tournament Series final, which is coming up on the 10th.
Tom Brower took part.
Tom Brower took part. He was actually fastest in the wild card as well.
He was.
He qualified for the Community Tournament Series final. The only reason he's not doing it is because he's not in the country. So, unfortunately, not able to take part in that final. But still, nonetheless, a real big highlight, I think, for many people in the world of sim racing, I'm sure. I know the guys like Dirk Chocolate, for example, he's a huge flight sim fan. He's also, massively into planes and sort of, should we say, aeronautics? I'm not sure whether that's the right word. But yeah, it's pretty cool, getting involved. And I think it's another string to the bow of sim racing at this point, having something like Celeros, pushing the boundaries of what really is, no limits when it comes to sim racing.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, it's a game that is replicating Airspeeder, which hasn't really started yet, which is kind of cool because obviously it's the opposite way around to sim racing in that sim racing replicates real world racing. Real racing came first, and then sim racing replicated it. In this sense, they've come up with the concept of Airspeeder, but obviously developing that technology takes a long time. So in the meantime, they're simulating what they think it's going to be like when it comes out, so you can do the game first, which I love. It's great. It's sim racing if you take the two literal meanings of those words. Is it motorsport? I mean, there's a motor.
It takes motors to spin the propellers.
So, I mean, it's not too dissimilar. The only difference is it's 3D, not 2D. It's really the only difference.
If you're a big fan of, should we say, Trackmania, I would say it's kind of, I think for that market, that's generally where I see it, and that they're quite addictive, those games as well. Yeah. So it's, a lot of the, I remember when we were over for Gamers 8 doing the ESL Gamers 8 Championship for Rennsport, everyone was playing Trackmania in the players' lounge. That was all they were playing, and I could kind of see that, that Celeros could take a really handy position, I think, in the world of sim racing, and I think we could see some really interesting esports championships come off the back of it too.
Yeah, I'm enjoying
controllers,
pads, and joysticks. Eventually, they're hoping that they want to add joystick capability. Obviously, it's still early days in the development of the game, but I'm kind of thinking, we see like Next Level Racing, for example, who have also supported the Celeros franchise as well. They're also one of the sponsors. They've developed their own flight sim technology, in a sense, for flying on Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I think they'll be hoping, to have their technology used in the Celeros sort of game sphere, because they've got inbuilt cockpit capability. So you sit there and you can fly it as if you're in the aircraft, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Okay, so we are strapped for time because our other resident celebrity, Random Cool Sign, has got a busy day of engagements, just like the King of England. So in a couple of minutes,
not like
George,
that. Come on, bad joke.
let's have the updates from the league racing world and what there is to look forward to.
Yeah, well, obviously off the back of PSGL, we had another race on Wednesday evening. Obviously, it was Jarno Opmeer who went ahead and took victory by only 0.005 of a second ahead of Istvan Pukki from Ferrari. Pukki came out with a statement to suggest that he's still persevering and trying to get himself a seat in F1 esports. Of course, currently the resident reserve driver or development driver at Ferrari at this point, but still pursuing and hoping that he can get himself a full-time seat. I think one of the other standout figures as well, and a young driver that has taken the world by storm, went very close to winning the PSGL F2 championship recently, Ismail Fassi. Of course, he recently got signed by Williams. He matched the strategy from Jarno Opmeer toe for toe, both starting on the hard tyres, finishing strong on softs. Easily, I think I would say one of the most dynamic and charismatic drivers on track, especially when it comes to making overtakes. He is a real talent, and I know that my co-commentator in the PSGL series, Dan Field, came out and said that he is a champion in waiting. Could be, should we say, an unsung hero, I think, and someone who I think a lot of the fans are sort of siding towards. So who knows?
Exciting. It'd be nice to see some fresh faces in F1. I guess 24 esports series, if that's what we're going to be waiting for.
I wouldn't get too excited about the liveries in the next game cycle. No. Put it that way.
Yeah, the green
is carbon fiber.
Great. Well,
F1
thank you for joining me for our monthly roundup.
Yeah,
we will be back next month with a monthly roundup, and of course we will be doing our pre-show weekly catch-ups each week, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
See you soon, guys.
Bye.
Bye.